Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Well, the Alabama men's basketball team had dreams of making it to New York for the NIT semifinals. Didn't happen. The Tide fell to Miami at Coral Gables on Saturday in the second round of the NIT. Seniors Levi Randolph and Rodney Cooper led the way with 17 points and 20 points respectively. With the 73-66 loss, Alabama, of course, now turns its attention to finding a new head basketball coach to replace Anthony Grant, who was let go after 6 seasons in Tuscaloosa. And with that, we say good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Tider Insider TV. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. Our program presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock, proud bottlers of Pepsi products like Pepsi Next. All that great Pepsi flavor, 2/3 less sugar, only 60 calories per 12-ounce can. And since I'm now watching the old waistline, 60 calories sounds pretty good to me. Tastes good, too. That's the best part. All right, Rodney, let's turn our attention to basketball. 19 wins this season, a team that at times was fun to watch, at other times was kind of frustrating. They mixed in some experience with some youth, but the inconsistent play, and of course the season before only winning 13 games, cost Anthony Grant his job. Now, we talked about last week Grant's situation. Now, though, we're moving forward, and Alabama is too, to find a new head coach, but not before interim head coach John Brannen, who took over after Grant was let go. He praised the Crimson Tide seniors and gave the players a lesson in facing adversity on and off the court.
19 wins. Getting into the postseason, the NIT, and what they've been able to accomplish over this last week under less than ideal circumstances, obviously. The character, what I told them in the locker room was, when you get an opportunity to reveal your character, and when adversity sets in, later on in life you're going to refer back to how you reacted to that adversity. And instead of running for the hills, these guys took it straight on and played with passion, played with great emotion, and played for each other. So as they get to their families and they do things in their post-college career, when that adversity sets in, they're going to be prepared to take it head on, because we got a great group of young men. I was proud of how they handled things.
Great message there to the players from John Brannen. All right, Alabama, and we're going to talk more about it in a moment, it's getting just trashed in the national media that they have no tradition, not a good program, nobody wants to coach here. Forbes magazine would disagree. All right, the top 5 in terms of the most valuable college basketball teams, no surprise there, Louisville, Kansas, Kentucky, Arizona, North Carolina. But look at Alabama at number 14, valued at $12.3 million, a lot higher than a lot of other quality programs around the country. And we show you that to make this point. Maybe this isn't a top 5 job, maybe it's not a top 10 job, but it is a quality job, and Alabama certainly financially is set to put together a big-time package to entice a big-time head coach. Rodney, let's talk about what we know. On Sunday, you and I talked about the situation. I told you then I talked to someone who said that Alabama certainly had targeted Greg Marshall as its leading candidate. And then, of course, reports came out yesterday that that is the case. Now, there are other names that we'll get to in a moment, but Greg Marshall is a big-time basketball coach at Wichita State. The issue right now is, of course, his team is in the Sweet 16. They'll play Notre Dame on Thursday night in Cleveland, Ohio. But this Alabama basketball program seems to have set its sights on Marshall, and from what we're being told, he will be interested in talking to Alabama once the season is over.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it, Gary. I think Alabama's set to make an offer to Greg Marshall as soon as the season's over with, and I think it's going to be a substantial offer, and it'll come down to whether or not he wants to accept it. And, I think once his last game is over, we'll start hearing some buzz about it.
All right. I want to say a couple of things, because like I said, I've listened and read stories on the internet about how nobody wants to coach in Tuscaloosa. There's no tradition. It's a dead-end job. I'm going to dispute that a little bit. First, I'm going to start with the facility, Coleman Coliseum. I think a lot of people that are calling it a dump haven't been in it. In 2005, nearly $30 million was spent to renovate it. And I know on television all you can see is the playing floor. You can't see the locker rooms. You can't see the practice facility. You can't see the offices. And then in 2009, a brand new LED center scoreboard was put in. It may not be the best facility in the conference, but it's far from a dump. Far from it. Beautiful concourse, completely redone. Like I said 10 years ago, more was done in 2009. So people that are saying that are wrong. All right, 20 NCAA tournament appearances, 8 Sweet 16s, 1 Elite 8. You're right, there is no Final Four on the Alabama resume, and I guess that hurts in terms of perception. But 1,600 plus wins. Rodney, if you're interested on where that ranks, it ranks 32nd all time in terms of number of wins, ahead of programs like Oklahoma State, Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Tennessee, Iowa, Marquette, Pittsburgh, Dayton, Illinois State, Oregon, Vanderbilt, Murray State, Minnesota, all programs.
Michigan State.
Yeah, Michigan State right there with Alabama. So, you know, as I said, in terms of conference tournament championships, 6 of them, second all-time to Kentucky, 8 regular season championships. Now, in the last few years, that has not been the case. But the thought that a big-time coach wouldn't be interested in Tuscaloosa, in my opinion, is just wrong. Now, we'll see. We'll see who they wind up hiring. But I think this program is getting trashed for no reason. And I want to say this. The football program, we know what it's all about, but it wasn't that long ago when people were saying there's no way Nick Saban would come to Tuscaloosa. Alabama had been passed. The facilities weren't top-notch. It was no longer a marquee job.
Well, I think a lot of those people want Alabama to be average. Let's be honest. I mean, a lot of them are national people, and, you know, where they come up with you know, their ideas, certainly it's their opinion, but at the same time, I think when you look at it, Alabama trying to attract a guy like Greg Marshall, what are they supposed to do? They want to go for the best, and they certainly are going to make a run at him and make a strong offer. So it really doesn't matter what the Tim Brandos or the Gary Parishes or the Pat Forde's, guys that really don't understand or know the Alabama program or don't care to know it, and the tradition that you laid out there, Gary. Certainly it's a very attractive job. I think they're going to make a substantial offer to Greg Marshall. We'll see if he wants to take it or not, but I think there's a lot of potential here in this program. You showed ranked 14th right now by Forbes magazine, and how much potential does the program have? I mean, I think it's got enormous potential. You look at some of the success that C.M. Newton had. At one span in the 70s, they were one of the top 5 winningest programs of the decade. You look at what Wimp Sanderson, the success he had. Mark Godfrey had great success getting the program to the Elite 8, had them #1 in the country at one point. So I think this program clearly has a lot of potential. And for those who would dispute that, I can't understand it.
And Ronnie, of the 10 long-term programs in the SEC, Alabama has a winning record against all of them other than Kentucky. That includes Tennessee, that includes Vanderbilt, that includes Florida, who they lost 11 in a row to. Huge leads over LSU, Georgia, Auburn, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and also only 2 games behind Arkansas, which is a relatively new member, 28-30. And, you know, my point is there is tradition here. They've won in the past. They can win again. Here's a list of coaching candidates that are being mentioned. We talked a lot about Marshall, who is, by all accounts, a terrific coach. 122-20 the last 4 years at Wichita State, 4 NCAA tournament appearances, an undefeated regular season last year. Shaka Smart at VCU. Steve Prohm is an Alabama graduate at Murray State. Tom Crean seems to be a little shaky there at Indiana. We don't know what happened, but as I said earlier, right now we do believe the focus is on Greg Marshall at Wichita State. And you know what? Maybe Alabama won't wind up hiring Greg Marshall. Maybe they won't hire any of those guys. Maybe they'll hire somebody that's perceived not to be a big-time coach. But if they do hire Marshall or they do hire a Shaka Smart, I just hope all those people that are saying it couldn't happen will just say I'm wrong. I was wrong. You know, I bet they won't, though.
No, probably not.
They'll say, well, they threw a lot of money at him. But that's part of hiring a big-time coach, is throwing a lot of money at somebody, and that's the first step. If you're going to get a big-time coach, we will keep you up to date on that. Just wanted to throw some figures out that people aren't throwing out when they say Alabama has no history and has no tradition and is not a good place to coach. Well, we know there's not going to be any coaching changes in the cards for Alabama football unless Nick Saban decides he wants to leave. The football team back at work on Monday following 10-day break for spring break. Alabama you know, only through 2 practices. There'll be a media opportunity tomorrow. They've been in shorts both days, Rodney, so we haven't seen a lot, but anything that caught your attention?
I mean, not really, to be honest with you. It's very difficult to see in 10 minutes, and you're talking about, as you see there, that they're in shorts. It's difficult to make too many you know, real assessments. And, you know, but I don't know if you mentioned that Grant Hill, the offensive lineman, was once again absent from practice on medical leave, as Coach Saban told us before spring break. So we'll see how that story develops.
All right, we will indeed. All right, we'll hear from Coach Saban tomorrow after practice, as I mentioned, as he will talk with reporters for the first time since spring break concluded. Still more coming up on TITV, including a special story on an Alabama swimmer competing with a higher purpose. And an update on the Crimson Tide gymnastics team. They know where they're heading for regionals. They're happy about it. We'll discuss the SEC Championship and the upcoming NCAA Regionals when we come back. This is Tider Insider. We'll be taking your phone calls, emails as well. There is the information on the screen on how you can get in touch with us. As always, we look forward to hearing your questions and comments. TITV will return right after these messages. I think most people would have said Alabama wasn't one of the favorites heading into the SEC championships, but Dana Duckworth's Crimson Tide brought home the program's 9th SEC title on Saturday night in Duluth, Georgia. Alabama edged out the favorites, LSU and Florida. Lauren Beers finished third in the all-around, and the Tide heads into the regionals with a lot of momentum. Dana Duckworth discussed what it was like carrying on Sarah and David Patterson's legacy.
You know, at first, it was not real. It didn't feel, I kept pinching myself. But this whole experience has been surreal, that you get to be mentored by Sarah and David, who are two of the most amazing individuals in America. And then you get to become the person that carries on their legacy. And so I feel like so honored that Sarah and David paved that path for us, and protecting the legacy was what tonight was about. And that's what we carried on.
Alabama is the #1 seed in the NCAA Auburn Regional, which includes the Tigers, Minnesota, Iowa, Maryland, and George Washington. That will begin on April the 4th, and the top 2 teams from that regional advance to the NCAA Championships. Well, the Alabama swimming team will head to the NCAA Championships in Iowa City this weekend. One Alabama sophomore is swimming with more than just records in mind. Jen Chapman has that story.
I didn't expect to go that fast, 1864. It was a surprise for me, so that was a really nice race.
A really nice race is quite the understatement. At the 2015 SEC Swimming Championships, Alabama sophomore and 2012 Olympian for Greece, Christian Golumev, swam a blistering 50 free. In fact, it was the 5th fastest time in the history of the event.
I'm just really confident. I just know that I work for that, and I just know that I'm gonna swim fast. So I just know it. So I don't feel nervous about anything. I'm just excited.
The defending NCAA champion and the favorite heading into NCAAs this week knows he has the target on his back, but he'll prepare for this race just like all his others. Christian says it's like going into a fight.
Trying to get mad before the blocks. So, you know, sometimes I'm hitting myself and stuff. I don't know. I'm trying to get mad. That really helps me a lot.
There's something else Christian does before his races. He touches his heart, his lips, and then points upwards.
It's for my father and my mother. And they're not alive right now. And I just do that, and this is like for them.
Due to medical error, Christian's mother passed shortly after giving birth to him. His father, Svetin, was a famous Bulgarian swimmer who competed at the Olympic Games in Moscow and Seoul. He was Christian's coach before passing of cancer in 2010.
Yeah, he was saying 1500, and he really wanted someone of his sons to follow his steps, so I did.
When the Alabama coaching staff saw Christian swim at the London Olympics, they saw raw talent and immediately wanted him in Tuscaloosa. After joining the team last January, the coaches have been hard at work on Christian's starts, turns, and technique, and believe his performances are just scratching the surface.
I still think he's a bit of a puppy dog. He's still got a lot. I still think he's got a lot of room to improve in terms of his strength, power, skill set. So it's going to be fun watching him.
No one for the Crimson Tide will say his time at the SEC Championships was a surprise. Just a week before at practice, Christian was set to swim a time trial when he noticed his teammates staying after practice to watch. He threw down in 18.6.
He just has that innate ability to just tune out everything, focus in on what he's doing. I don't know that anyone taught him to do it. I actually asked quite a few of my kids going into the SECs, listen, go sit down with Christian, talk to him, ask him what he thinks about how he goes, what's his routine, how he does it. And quite a few of them have come back and utilized things that he talk to them about very successfully.
And while those who see Christian compete are in awe, Christian hopes there are 2 others that are watching.
I don't know if they're watching right now, but I want to let them know that I'm doing this for them.
And Rod, I think a lot of the people who didn't know who Christian Golubev is will certainly be pulling for him now.
Yeah, great
even more
story.
so. Good stuff there, Jen. Thank you. Much more coming up on Tider Insider Television, including Alabama softball team hosting the Florida Gators. We'll tell you how they did. And next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. 205-348-9882 is the number. Email us, TITV@WVUATV.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag TiderInsiderTV. We're going to be back with that and more. Stay with us. Alabama softball first. The series was scheduled for Saturday, Sunday, Monday instead of Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then they got one game in on Saturday. They tried to play a second because they knew rain was coming on Sunday. It got suspended. Alabama wound up losing both of those games. They lost the first one on Saturday. They lost the second one when the series resumed yesterday. They did salvage the third game, thankfully, 5-1 last night to take 1 out of 3. Alabama still number 5 in both the polls. They'll host Georgia Tech tomorrow, and then Texas A&M for a big SEC series starting this Friday at Rhodes Stadium. So Alabama losing a series at home against the defending NCAA Women's World Series champion Florida Gators. All right, let's head to the phone lines. They're stacked up, Rodney, so let's get right to it. Harold is in Anniston. Hey, Harold, how are you?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Yes, sir. Very well. Go ahead, Harold.
I want to say congratulations to the women's gymnastics team, and I want to ask you guys, do you think Mr. Ballard, I think he did the right thing firing Coach Grant, man. And I think anybody that coached at Alabama would you know, it's a great place, man, and all these naysayers, you know, I really don't pay attention to them because I live in Alabama, you know, and I stick with my team.
You're right.
This would be a great place to coach.
I think it is, Harold. I mean, I think it's got a chance to, you know, for one thing, how many schools can you go to with this many NCAA tournament appearances without a Final Four? You got a chance to make some history. As far as did he make the right move, only time will tell. A lot of it depends on who they hire. But I do think, as much as I respected Coach Grant, he was given 6 years. You saw just over the state line in Starkville, they pulled the plug on Rick Ray in 3 years. So I think Coach Grant was given ample time. But again, we'll just have to see what happens, and we'll, you know, judge it a little further down the line. Let's go to, or stay here in Tuscaloosa and talk with our buddy Joseph. Joseph, what's up, partner?
Yeah, what's going on, soldiers? How you feeling now?
Oh, feeling good. What you got for us?
I mean, give me a scorecard. Give what if you be a judge, okay, be a decision, okay, make your decision. Who's looking ahead right now on the scorecards with the quarterback so far? I know it ain't been number 2 days of practice. What would you say about this old Gary?
Rodney, Joseph said it's only been 2 practices, but what do you got so far on the quarterback race?
I think it's really difficult to say, Joseph. There's a long way to go. There's a lot of guys competing for the spot. Of course, we know that Jacob Coker was the backup last year, and he's certainly the guy that seems to be the heir apparent to Blake Sims. But at the same time, I mean, you have a lot of really talented young guys that are there competing. Cooper Bateman, Alec Morris, David Cornwell, even the freshman Blake Barnett on hand now. So, you know, let's allow spring to kind of play itself out, see how they perform in the scrimmages and how we head into the summer, and then I really don't think there's going to be a starter that's going to come out of spring practice. I think we'll find out in the summer.
Yeah, you never know what could happen during the summer
right.
too.
That's
a lot of
right.
things could still happen between spring practice and fall practice. We'll see this summer. All right, I tell you what, Jerry, you keep holding. We're going to get to you. You'll be first up after the break. But we got to pay some bills here. Take a break. Still much more coming up on TITV, including an update on the baseball team. They did something this past weekend, to know the team had been able to do this season against the Aggies, and more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, there's the information on the screen. Jerry, you keep holding. We'll get to you. We'll be right back after this. Alabama baseball. All right, I'll give you the good news first. They beat Texas A&M this past weekend. First team to do that all season long. The Aggies are 24-0. Bad news is they lost the other 2 games, so they dropped the series at home at the Hoover Met to A&M. Still, though, to get a win over a team that hadn't lost a single game, not all bad. Here's a look at this week in Alabama baseball. They are at South Alabama tonight down in Mobile, and then a big SEC series Thursday through Saturday down in Gainesville against the Florida Gators. Let's head right back to the phone lines. Jerry, thanks for holding. You're next up on the program. Jerry, you still with us? All right, I guess Jerry did not want to hold, but he wanted to know about Sydney Littlejohn, why she did not pitch in the Florida series. Coach's decision. Coach Murphy leaned heavily on Alexis Osorio, the freshman, pitched Jury a little bit. I guess he just felt like that was the better matchup and decided not to go with Littlejohn, but we'll be seeing her soon. Wouldn't be shocked if we see her tomorrow against Georgia Tech. All right, let's go to Northport and talk to David. David, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine, guys.
Good. Go ahead, David.
My question or my comment is that it's no surprise that any kind of what would be known as a big-time coach would not want to come to Alabama to coach basketball. But you're right when you say that this is a program that has great potential. C.M. Newton and Wimp Sanderson proved that. I'm just very, very, very sad that in the last few years that it hasn't proven out. I just hope and pray that we can get somebody in here and that can bring basketball back to what it should be. You know, you go to the northern part of this state, Decatur, Huntsville area. There's a different brand of basketball up there, and Alabama can be a basketball state, but we've got to coexist with football, and that's what the problem has been. We cannot yet coexist with football, and that's, you know, look at somebody like Michigan.
All right, David, we're getting short on time. I hate to cut you off there. Your point's well made. I would say that there's no problem coexisting. When Alabama hired Anthony Grant, most people said he wouldn't come to Alabama. They're trying to win in basketball here. They're not trying to not win because of football. I can promise you that. You can have successful programs in both, and I think that's what Alabama's trying to do. Good points, though. We'll be back to wrap it up after this. Time flies when you are having fun, Rodney. We're all out of time. Don't forget, if you missed any of tonight's show, you can catch the replay tonight at 10:30 after the news at 10, or also online at WVUATV.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night from Tuscaloosa.